when you're in that depersonalized state, it's almost like you can't imagine a life where this is not there, and you don't remember the life you had before this, or not like you don't remember it, but you don't remember how it feels like to feel normal. But then once you recover and you're just like there, then you just realize that, oh, normal is just normal. Like this is just normal to me. Like you just become, you don't have to be all self-aware, and you don't have all these anxious thoughts all the time, and you just break the habit.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with John Rafach from Chicago. John is 18 years old. In August of 2023, John developed depersonalization disorder after a series of panic attacks. As he described it, quote, "I felt very aware of myself, constantly questioning if I felt real, and everything felt off. I was in a constant state of DPDR and felt very lost and anxiety-ridden," end quote. John struggled with depersonalization disorder and its symptoms for about 4 months, but fortunately he has since made a complete recovery, and John is with us today to talk about his experience with and recovery from depersonalization disorder. John, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel, man. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've always been like, I feel like a little anxious in my life, and so I always take on like I always daydream, and I always have these like visions about being successful and being able to like create, and on YouTube especially, because that's how we got to know each other, obviously, from my video. And I'm really interested in finance and all those things, but I struggled with depersonalization, so I figured that, before I finally move on from that chapter in my life, I could share my story and hopefully help other people out, and especially talk about how the manual helped me and how it's important to like understand those details.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this is something that you just mentioned, but you had initially contacted me and sent me an email with the link to the video, and so I then shared the video across the social media. But it's just it's really well put together. It's a kind of a short but comprehensive outline of what your experience was and what triggered it. And yeah, great to see the message being put out on YouTube as well. So in the description for this video, we'll link to your channel and link to that video as well. So anybody watching this, make sure to go over and subscribe to John's channel as well. But John, so can you maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with DPDR, kind of just going back over some of the stuff in the video, and what how did things start for you?
Yeah, so I would say that everything started because about, I would say, 7 months ago, it all started when I was lifting hard in the gym. I forgot to mention that in my intro, that I was really into the gym. I mean, I was doing all types of bodybuilding training, and just trying to, perform at the top level, because I eventually wanted to be a power lifter for my school. But I had injured my lower back deadlifting one time, and that caused sciatica down my leg, which is like the nerve that runs through your leg, and it was being irritated constantly by my lower back. So it just was causing me pain, and so for the next, I bet, like 3 or so months, I was just kind of lost, and already my anxiety was heightened because you kind of get into the Google researching and you don't know what's happening with yourself. And eventually I found out, and I was taking I was taking pain medication to stay on top of the pain. I was taking about every 6 or so hours, but at the same time, I haven't been working out, and I was just kind of being very unhealthy, and obviously all factors kind of just build up. And eventually I was at work one day, and I had taken pain medication before, but after about like 6 hours into my shift, I think I felt like a chest pain or something. And I was like, oh my God, what is this chest pain? Obviously I Googled it, worst mistake. Then it kind of just spiraled into this awful panic attack. I was genuinely scared. And like me sitting here right now, I couldn't even describe how like scary it truly was to be in that like state of panic where you really think you're gonna die, kind of like your hands are sweating and then your heart is racing, palpitations, and yeah, just being scared. So after that, I didn't even know what caused that. I was still taking I was still taking the medication, and then again it happened twice actually. So I went to work again and the same thing happened, and that time was kind of the one that really put me in the state of just like more so being hyper aware, just because I was constantly checking myself. Because if you panic attack and heart attack, I mean, they're not the same thing at all for sure, but I'm saying that it kind of presents with, like, let's just say a chest pain or your heart is racing, then you might think it's a heart attack. So I was just constantly just checking myself and being like, like, is everything feeling okay with myself, and am I all right? So kind of the week after those panic attacks, after I realized that maybe it was maybe the medication, the really bad diet, or all the sugar that I was eating, and it was just adding up, I was just like, okay, I'll step back from that. But at the same time, while I was going forward, I was noticing that, like, when I was in school or when I was talking to somebody, after the moment would happen, I would just look back on the moment and I'd be like, just questioning if I was really present in that moment. And it was just really odd to just constantly check yourself. And after about a week of that, I mean, I was just kind of becoming worried and worried about this until I was at work one day, and I was listening to a podcast. It was like talking about some, I think, conspiracy theories, and it caused me to, I think, well, um, how conspiracy theories are like fun and all, but sometimes they get a little too psychological. And I was thinking about that, and then it just was like while I was working, and then I just had this moment of like fear come upon me, and it was just it was very scary. And then I was freaking out because I was like full blown, just constantly checking myself and having this like feeling of disconnect from like when I was working, and I was trying to calm myself down by listening to music, but it was always on my mind. Like, I couldn't. The first step, you're supposed to just be like, okay, this is DPDR, and then you move on from it. But for me, it was not like that. It was more like, oh my gosh, what is this? This is awful. And all the anxious thoughts just start racing through your head. And so that's basically how it started for me. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and with the sciatica, John, was that just kind of to rewind a little bit? Was that like from pressure on your legs from lifting weights? Was it?
When you're like deadlifting, your back is kind of like you're putting so much pressure on the lumbar region, which is your lower part, right above your uh, tailbone. And so I guess when I was doing that, it had maybe a bulged disc in between my spine, and then it was just pressing on that nerve down my leg. So like, nerve, they like all run through your body, and everything's all well interconnected. So even one little push on your nerve is going to cause like burning pain down your leg, which really sucks when it's like really severe. But yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah. That sounds quite painful. Um, and certainly, I like in being in the position of like not being able to exercise after that as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of exercise as well, and I always find that like in the periods of time when you like, for example, like during Christmas, last Christmas, I got COVID. I think my third time getting it or something, but and fully vaccinated and everything, but my third time getting it. And then, but like the most frustrating thing about one of the most frustrating things about it was that like I couldn't go to the gym, and I was in a good routine of like going every night and getting on the treadmill and stuff. But for that like a week, almost 10 days, I couldn't do it, and my body is just kind of going like, what's going on? And also I don't know if you found this as well, John, but like there's such a kind of sense of like it's such a great way to focus your energy when you exercise, and it also improves your sleep patterns, and you just you feel better about yourself and all the rest of it. And then suddenly when that's kind of taken away from you, that can push up your stress levels and kind of make you more introspective and start even feeling a bit kind of panicky. You're kind of, you can't get that energy out, so it kind of starts to go kind of backwards or kind of
Right.
internally, psychologically, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. That's
yeah,
how it is.
yeah,
I always use the gym as a way to just kind of just push everything out physically and mentally, and just be able to have a place where I'm just fully focused on myself and just pushing the for me, like lifting weights and heavy weights. And just for me, it was never about the strength. It was kind of more aesthetic, because I don't know, I just, for some reason, I really like the aesthetics that come with like just bodybuilding and like trying to make yourself the most perfect form. And obviously when you cut that off, and I've been going at it for so long in my life, then it's just kind of like you start to feel yeah, like you just look at yourself a little bit and you're just like, oh, I'm like feeling very slow. I'm not, I don't have that place anymore, for my to express myself.
yeah, yeah. So so you said you were you had you felt panicky at work. What do you mind me asking what you work at, John? What's your job?
Yeah, so I actually work at a fast food. I work at Taco Bell, and it's really close by. It's like a 2 minute walk from here from my home, so it's very nice to have it there. And but that also environment could be high stress, especially with
Yeah,
somebody doesn't get their food right, or this, or especially with a rush when there's like a lot of cars coming through. I feel like all those little things add on, eventually makes like kind of like a, you're just prone to exploding and just being very stressed.
sure, sure. So you're working and you're in school, but so one of the things you mentioned was you felt like you're constantly questioning yourself in the moment, and having a conversation and kind of asking yourself, was that really there? Did it really happen? So John, can you tell us some more about some of the other symptoms you were experiencing in that time?
Yeah, so the first things I started noticing were the question, the being very self-aware part. Then my vision was super odd. Honestly, I can't describe it to the detail, but it was very almost like I could, like, when I would look at a tree, and like a tree is like very beautiful, but I couldn't just comprehend it. Like I couldn't just see the full picture. Like it was just super odd. Um, and then obviously when I was talking to somebody, it felt like I was just kind of on, like I wasn't really talking to them. I was more like just spitting out answers and just trying to get words out so I could, just stop the conversation. Or um, also I would just feel disconnected, feel like I was on autopilot a lot, very anxious a lot, overthinking. I had a lot of anxious thoughts, just irrational thoughts, existential thoughts too. Um, Obviously, because I was all over the place with this. I mean, I was not used to it at all. So I was just Googling, especially on forums, just looking through and just seeing posts about it, and just trying to pinpoint what this was exactly, all these feelings that I was getting. And I just couldn't figure out what it was. And that's what kind of just kept it going.
Yeah. Did you explain what was happening to your parents or your teachers, John?
Yeah, so I actually talked to my mom about it, but I didn't talk about it until it became really bad. So I would say I was in this like kind of mild state of DPDR for about a full month or so. And then in my video I said it was called like the worst 3 days of my life, where I was like, it was just this, I had this really bad episode of it where I remember I was taking like an ice bath to calm myself down, because it's really good for your anxiety when you're really cold. You just focus on breathing, so you don't have to like worry, or your thoughts just kind of disappear when you're in that environment of just trying to survive. And I remember then I was drying my hair, and I just had this like really weird moment where I kind of just looked into the mirror, and it felt like I kind of just zoomed out of my body, and it was just like very, very scary, honestly. And it like I tried going to sleep, but my thoughts were just racing, and I was just really panicked. But that's when I started. That's when I told my mom about it, because I wanted her to know, and I just wanted to, try to give myself the best help possible. And my mom did help a lot, because she was there for me, and I'm really appreciative of her because it was very probably scary for her too, because it's not a common thing. So if somebody tells you something like that, you're like I've never experienced something like this. Like, how do I help someone with this? And it's very hard.
Yeah, for sure. I remember telling. I mean, I was 25 when it happened to me, and I remember like trying to explain what I was experiencing to my parents, and I could see like they just because I at that point hadn't come across the term depersonalization, so I was trying to describe like I feel like I'm not here. I feel like things aren't real, and that's a frightening thing to say, and it's a frightening thing for I think a loved one to hear. But it's great that you had that support system there, and she was able to help you. And so, John, at what point did you come across the term depersonalization? Was it just through Googling, or what was it?
I had heard of depersonalization before, but it wasn't like I had no clue at like it was just like depersonalization, not feeling real. I kind of associated back then, I kind of associated it with like kind of like I would say like schizophrenia. I thought it was that type of thing where it's like it's like brain damage or like because I've heard stories of people telling me that, oh, I have a friend who's like smoked weed and then like they like it just messed their brain up forever, and I'm like, oh, this is really scary. Like I would that's why I would say I would be scared. I was scared of it, but it was never on my mind like it was when I experienced it myself. But it was just like always this thing that I knew above. But when I first got it, I was like, I think I Googled why do I feel like I'm constantly on autopilot, and then it turned up depersonalization disorder. I'm like, okay, depersonalization. Okay, I've heard of this before. And then you start to think, oh, the story my friend told me. Oh, my friend had depersonalization, but she's having it for 2 years and she's really struggling with it. I'm like, 2 years? Like, oh my God, I can't imagine living with this for 2 years. It's awful. And like all the things that I've heard about it before and how I thought of it, like how I was associating it with like a really bad mental illness, then it kind of just becomes like, you're just kind of very scared now, and then you don't know what to do. And obviously, the first thing you don't see on Google is, hey, you're okay. DPDR is a a normal brain response. It's more like it's just scary stuff that it shows you there. And I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing that really I feel like there should be more out there. And you're doing great with helping people and having like because I saw eventually I'll go more into it, but I saw your link that eventually started to help me. But yeah, that's how I learned what it was. But I didn't really learn what it was until I read your manual.
Okay, okay. I'm delighted to hear it was so helpful. And in that time, when you were trying to figure it out as well, John, did you speak to any doctors or therapists, or was there anyone like that involved?
So yeah, after I had my little panic attack after the ice bath thing, I went to the doctor the next day cuz I think I left school earlier because I was feeling really like it was just really bad. It was really intense. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor, I guess you could say, knew of it, but it was just such a broad understanding of it. It was nothing that much. And the doctor did give me some good advice, which I kind of used with added on everything. But other than that, yeah, I did see a doctor, and it was all right. I was obviously anxious to go to the doctor just to because I was scared about if figuring out if I had something horrible or in that sense. But yeah.
Sure, sure. So the next question I usually ask at this point, John, is what was your lowest point? But I think from the video and what you mentioned, it's probably the 3 days that started with the ice bath. I presume it's that, but maybe it's something else. But can you just maybe tell us a little bit more about those 3 days and what that was like for you?
Yeah, so it started with the ice bath and the panic attack I had, and the next day I remember I went to school. I was still experiencing everything I had the night before. It was a little less intense, but obviously I was it's that's something hard that you can't just get that off your mind that easy. And I was in school and I was feeling all the symptoms again. uh like I was just very disconnected, and it just made me really like, again, I was panicking even more now because it's just constantly on my mind. And I remember I was in school, and I just decided to leave school. Like I didn't even want to like call my mom and tell her, hey, I'm gonna leave school, or because I just didn't want to stay in there any longer. I just needed to get out because it was just too much for me in that moment. So eventually I just left school, and thankfully I contacted my mom, and I told my girlfriend that I was like out of school, and I was just like sitting next to the school, and I was just gonna wait for somebody to pick me up or something. And my phone ended up dying too. So for like, obviously I'm all alone now, and I'm just, experiencing this, and I'm just trying to, calm myself down, breathe. And even when I'm in like my most calmest state, I could still feel that depersonalization. So it was okay. But then I also started to feel really awful because my phone had died, and now I had no way of telling, the people around me that I was fine and I was okay, and I'm just gonna be here and just gonna wait for somebody. So it was just really bad. And it was bad by me, but I wouldn't blame myself because it was just like a really hard time in that moment. But after that day had passed, I like tried to get my mind off it. I just couldn't. Like I remember I was playing. I think I was playing a video game on my computer when I had got home, and it just didn't feel like it. Just I couldn't connect with it. Like I felt very disconnected from like the stuff that I used to find like passion in and interest in. And the day after that was like the final day where I went to school again, but I had this really bad, panic attack in class, in my culinary class, and I had like called my mom, just, can you please take me out of school? And I really want to figure this out. And thankfully, she let me go home, and I went for a walk, and that's when I found that's when I started to like actually look into and Google. Obviously, that's not a good thing, but I Googled, and I eventually found your link. So that was I say my lowest point. Like those 3 days were just horrible, and from sitting here right now, I'm glad I got through that because it was just awful, and I just know it was awful without even remembering truly how bad it was.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough experience for sure. So with all that said, John, how did your recovery start?
So my recovery started when I first on that last day that I was just talking about, and I remember I had just gotten out of school. I was waiting for my mom to pick me up, and I had seen a link, and it was like DP manual. Um, at this point, I mean, I was doing nothing for my recovery. I was very lost because I just had no guide. It's one thing feeling this way, but then also not even understanding why you're feeling like this. It feels like the universe is just like punishing you for just like you didn't even ask for this, and it just happened. And it's just like, wow, now, and I'm not even gonna have a at least a guide to get through this. And it's scary having something and not knowing what it is. So again, I was on Google, just kind of doom scrolling and being just maybe just like, I think I looked up how to recover, and eventually I came across your link to your website, the dpmanual.com, and I had seen I think it was testimonials, like the testimonials you had on your page, and I clicked on them, and I was just like reading through them, and I got all these comments. And um obviously I think it was the reassurance aspect of it, but when I had looked at those comments, immediately I had felt kind of better just from the fact knowing that somebody had felt this way and then also felt better afterwards. I kind of just couldn't believe that that was possible at that point. It was just so low at that point. I had purchased the depersonalization manual. I had it on my PC the day right when I got home from school, or not from the doctor that day. And that's how my recovery started. And I started reading it. I listened to the audiobooks, and I just like, when I was going through all the specific steps and all just the video in the informational video about understanding what depersonalization even was in the first place, I was just very like a weight lifted kind of. It was just like, oh my God, like this makes so much sense that this is happening. And it was just kind of crazy to, just see that somebody had went through this too and completely is fine. Like I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad it was helpful, John. And like I remember for me back in the day, like when I remember, and this is again 2005, so there was very little information about it online. But I remember seeing on forums there would be people who had recovered, and they would just kind of leave a final message on the forums, and then they'd be like, "Okay, I'm not going to be here anymore because it's not helping me to discuss it, but I'll just leave this last message and I'll go." Um, and it just gave me so much hope to just to know that people had gone through what I was going through and they had recovered. So it had to be possible, you know. But then, of course, you start. Well, for me, I would start thinking, yeah, but maybe I've got a different version of it, or maybe my circumstances are different, so maybe I can't recover. And then that whole thing would start up again, and I'd be back on the
Right.
forums. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how it happens.
That's how it goes, you know. It's such a common routine. But yeah, it's been great to kind of collect those testimonials from my book over the years and put them up as a kind of collection so there's like literally hundreds and hundreds of testimonials. Um, but so were you still like at school and working in all this time, John? You were?
Yeah, I was still in school and I was still working. Obviously, the depersonalization aspect of it made it much more difficult. But I'm glad that I had the people around me that I did because when I had learned that like not having somebody like not talking about it is an important aspect to recovering. And I had like explained that to my mom and my girlfriend. They were like really understanding of it, and they were like, okay, that makes sense. And then it was nice to have that. But um, yeah, but I'm glad I had my friends around me too. It helped a lot just to just get my mind off it at least a little bit, even if I still felt depersonalized. I would like before I had found anything on like the true recovery process, there was like grounding techniques that people say that help and all these things. So I would play this like game with my friend at work where it was like it was hangman but with celebrities, and we would just be like, because it kind of just connects you to the real world and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we would just play that game at work while there was no orders and no tacos to make. So yeah, it was fun.
Nice, nice. That's great. So, so what did your recovery feel like then? You know, was it something that kind of happened slowly over time? How did you notice that the thoughts were dissipating, the feelings were dissipating? How was that process for you?
So it was a very good process, I would say, because it happened I wouldn't say quickly, but it happened like I think in like two or so months where but at first it wasn't easy because when as I'm reading this manual and I'm like listening to these things and like, oh, it's actually a healthy brain response, and then I'm like, really, this is healthy for me? I mean, I feel awful. I feel like horrible
Yeah.
right now. There's nothing healthy about this. And like obviously the anxious thoughts. And um but there was also a lot of moments where I would be listening and like hearing these things, and it would be like, wow, that really does make sense. Like one thought could roll into so many horrible things. It just starts with one, and like the first thought of like, will I have this forever? Then it rolls into more and more, and just it feeds your anxiety. And I didn't even understand that part of it. I didn't understand the fact that depersonalization was actually healthy and it was normal. And and I also found it hard to believe that it was just the anxiety that was fueling my DPDR. And so once I understood those things I took the necessary steps. And I would say so like the first month was slow progressing, I would say. And like I would have these moments of like where I would be I would say clear, and I would be like, oh my God, like I was kind of busy in that moment, and I was just like, I haven't thought about DPDR, and I didn't think, like I didn't constantly check myself in that moment. And I was like, okay, that's pretty nice. I mean, and it was just once you feel that one moment of it, then you know that it's possible to just completely go the full way. And oddly enough, over the time, slowly and slowly as the time went on, because I would always listen to the audiobooks just to, keep myself in check. And but after time, I would stop listening to them, and then um, I would also listen to the interviews a lot, or the chats that you have on here also to help me out. So that's what I got inspired to email you. But and then slowly I also stopped looking into that, and then I would stop thinking about it more and more until it just kind of became this. It just kind of disappeared. I mean, it wasn't really like the significant moment of like, oh wow, I'm so like DPDR is gone. It's more like, what was that? Like it just happened. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it just goes away, and it's so crazy because after that whole experience, I wanted to, help others, and then I kind of look back at my experience, and I try to, you know like I couldn't even if I wanted to, and like induce that feeling on myself again, because it's just been so long gone, and it's just like your mind is like, no, it's no longer a habit where I have to keep checking myself all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's great to hear. How was the DP manual helpful in your recovery, John?
It was the most helpful thing possible because there was no other source, or there was no other manual or book that I could have read that was better for me than that, because it really went into the full details of just understanding uh all the aspects of it, and then even the little segments where it just talks about like how caffeine and the supplements and exercise and all the importance of these little things that just go into this one book, and you just have it all there. And especially the audiobooks, that was a really good part of. I love the audiobooks just because the fact that I could just, be doing my own thing while just listening to it in the background. Or um what I found really helpful was also the pep talk. I would just listen to it just like whenever my anxious thoughts would go too deep, because obviously when I had these anxious thoughts, like I would be doubting the manual. I'd be like, how could this be? There's no way this could be this easy, or it can't be like this. But then I would put on the manual, and then you would say all these anxious thoughts are caused by DP, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. And then I would be like, I'd be okay with it. And then I'm just super glad I found that link that day, because it really was. I had no other path. Like that was like kind of my last hope there, just to like, just make sure um to get on the path to recovery.
That's so good to hear, John. I'm thrilled that the book was so helpful in your recovery. So now that you have recovered, question people always ask me, is getting back to normal really getting back to normal?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, no. Oh, the good thing that I want to actually say this is that one important thing that I learned in the manual was understanding that feeling normal is not constantly checking if you're normal, because normal
Yeah.
people don't go around and just look at themselves constantly and are like, huh, how do I feel now? Do I feel disconnected right now? It's not like that. It's truly not like that. And once when you're in that depersonalized state, it's almost like you can't imagine a life where this is not there, and you don't remember the life you had before this, or not like you don't remember it, but you don't remember how it feels like to feel normal. But then once you recover and you're just like there, then you just realize that, oh, normal is just normal. Like this is just normal to me. Like you just become, you don't have to be all self-aware, and you don't have all these anxious thoughts all the time, and you just break the habit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So, what's your day-to-day life like now, John? So, actually, I just want to ask you: is the sciatica sorted? Are you back lifting again, or how are things?
So recently I got an MRI done for my lower back just to see how everything's down there, and with all my discs and stuff. But it has gotten way better. I remember though that a couple months ago, um, I had went to the gym because I thought I was okay. I thought I was perfectly fine, and then I was on the stairmaster trying to, you know, burn a couple calories just walking up the stairs, and then like immediately it flared up really bad in my leg, and I was just like, okay, I need to stay away from this. And it was hard to accept the fact that I had to stay away from something that I really wanted to do. And but then I'm just like, I don't want to. live the rest of my life with a messed up back. So I'd rather just, sacrifice this time now. And my friend had told me that you don't have to worry about it. Like 25 is the age where you're kind of in your prime to, be the most physically fit. So I'm like, I have so much years. I'd rather just completely heal now. And I rarely get symptoms anymore, but I just, the scary part is not even just physically, but mentally, just that barrier where, you don't want to deadlift just because you're scared that it will mess up. Like you have to get over that and, strengthening all the muscles just to make sure your whole body's supported. It's just all a process.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll get there. And I think that's a very wise decision to just look, give it the rest that it needs for the moment, and then go for it when you're ready. There's absolutely no reason to push it too hard in the meantime. And
Yeah.
then other than that, John, are you still working, still at school?
Yeah, I'm still working. I kind of shortened my hours, just because I was working too much and I would get barely any sleep, especially with the DPDR. I had to, make sure I was getting enough sleep because all the little things, all that go into that. Um, but other than that, yeah, I'm still going to school, and it's gonna be my last year, so I'm graduating after this, and I'm still continuing to do all my, creativeness stuff, my YouTube, my finance stuff, just all of it. I'm full force now after.
Full force indeed. That's great to hear, man. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
So last question for you, John. There's going to be people watching this interview who may be going through the same thing that you went through a couple of months ago. What advice would you have for those people?
I would say that it's important to understand what you're going through, and then also to make sure to just, even though it's hard and there's a lot of people who feel like their DPDR is worse and they're like stuck in this, and there's just no way out of this. Like, I would say that just have hope, and you have to understand that it's possible to get out of it, no matter how bad it feels, no matter what your anxious thoughts are telling you. And just knowing that you could get out of it is already like the biggest step you could take, because then that you could start letting go of it and you don't have to have this fear and anxiety towards it anymore. So that's the advice that I would give.
That's excellent advice. Thanks so much, Sean. It's been absolutely lovely speaking to you, John. So just before we go, I'll just remind people again that one of the reasons I'm talking to you today is because you posted this really great little video about your experience on your own channel. So again, I'm going to link to that in the video description here. And so I would advise everybody to go over and check out that video to see John's original story, and to subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. But John, it's been so lovely speaking with you today, man. Thank you so much for making the video in the first place, for coming on the channel today. I'm delighted that you've fully recovered and you're back full force, as you say yourself. So listen, enjoy life post recovery. Keep up the good work, and it's been lovely chatting with you.
And thank you so much, and thank you for all the people that you've helped, especially me. It's very nice that I got to talk to you today, and just very glad to meet you, and hopefully you continue on your journey to helping many more people, and hopefully my video and this interview will help that spread across the internet, and people could really watch and understand and get help for themselves.
It certainly will. Thanks so much, Sean. It was lovely chatting with you. Take care, man.
Take care.